Hello, everyone, and welcome to another video in the Cosmic Tower Science series. And in this video, we're going to talk more about the effects of man-made technology and also about the Miracle of Hemberg by Ibrahim Karim. But first, let's do a review of some of the things that we've talked about in previous videos. So in previous videos, we talked about how all of reality basically consists of vibrations in the one energy medium, and not just the vibrations that we know about in the electromagnetic spectrum and in the slower than light, but also and especially those in the faster than light realms. And we also talked about how two or more energy systems can exchange energy and information when they are in resonance, and that this resonant exchange of energy information is not just restricted to one level of existence, but that it can easily move between all levels of existence. So all living beings are in resonance with the things in their environment to which they are vibrationally linked. So as such, all living beings, including human beings, are affected by the quality of these vibrations, of these waves on all planes of nature. So we need to look at living beings as open energy systems, constantly exchanging energy and information with all planes of nature. And that's why it's important that we have something like the physics of quality that's just not only focused on the electromagnetic spectrum, which is just a small portion of all of existence, but the physics of quality is applicable to the subtle energy interactions on all planes of existence: spiritual, causal, mental, emotional, the vitality level, and the physical plane. So when we're talking about true holistic health, we are talking about energy balance on all levels, both internally as well as external to our system, individual and collective. So in the last video, we talked about how the subtle energy spectrum can be divided into the 12-band vibrational spectrum. And this 12-band vibrational spectrum contains the polarized energy qualities which manifest everything from the one source, from the primal unity. This 12-band spectrum is too subtle to be picked up by electromagnetic equipment, but it's so important because each band carries specific powers and creates precise functions in natural systems. So everything in creation has a specific configuration of the bands of the vibrational spectrum. We also talked about how within each band you can have both vertical and horizontal waves. And even though it's an oversimplification, typically the vertical waves are detrimental to living beings and the horizontal waves are beneficial. Then we also spoke about the one harmonizing energy quality of the center of the source. And when we are looking at balancing energies, how we need to get away from just balancing the polarizations on like a quantitative effect, but how we should actually look at transmuting the detrimental energy effects from many different environmental sources of toxic vibrations, and so looking at transmuting those detrimental energy effects into beneficial energy through applying centering methods and connecting it to this one harmonizing energy quality of the center, rather than just trying to block it out, deflect it, or absorb the toxic vibrations. So I often get the questions, how do we create harmony on the physical level in these subtle realms? Because many people, when you use the word subtle, they think of weak. But subtle doesn't mean weak. Subtle just means that it cannot be perceived by most people unless they're trained or attuned to perceive those qualities, and it cannot be perceived by the gross electromagnetic meters that we have. But subtle does not mean weak. And just a reminder how the life force travels all the way from the source through all the subtle planes, the spiritual, mental, emotional, into the energetic plane, and then animates life at the physical plane, and then decays into the electromagnetic spectrum. If you think of it as a river, and you have a river that is polluted, where would be the most beneficial place for you to apply a remedy? Where the river ends up into the ocean or into a lake or closer to the source? Well, the obvious answer is closer to the source. When you apply your remedy closer to the source, you affect way more of the river, and the solution's going to be much more powerful. The same here for the invisible river of life. So the more we apply our remedies, or we harmonize in the more subtle spectrums, the more powerful and the more planes of creation that we affect. So we're not going to go into all of the 12 bands of the vibrational spectrum. If you're interested in learning about that, look at the work of Ibrahim Karim, Biogeometry, or go to the Vesca Institute to learn more about this. But we do want to look at one particular quality that is called the negative green. And it's a little unfortunate that they chose the name negative green, because actually this quality is more in resonance with the gray spectrum between the white and the black. And this is a very special band. This is a very special quality because it's a penetrative carrier wave quality. That's why you will find this quality in X-rays, radio waves, microwaves, etc. And negative green is actually found throughout all natural systems, as it's this carrier wave which moves vibrational information. So many vibrations are not strong enough to move over very long distances or to move through physical objects or energetic barriers, but this negative green carrier wave can carry, and it can carry vibrations over great distances and straight through obstacles, similar to the use of electromagnetic waves to broadcast information in radio or television systems. So negative green is like this omnipresent, invisible vibration which moves energy and information from one location to another, just passing through physical matter. And like any of the bands within the vibrational spectrum, it can either be vertical or horizontal. So horizontal negative green is very beneficial for human beings. And you'll find it in beneficial earth radiation, but also in spiritual practices and positive mental practices. They create this horizontal negative green quality. It's also one of the components of the one harmonizing universal energy quality. So negative green, rather than anchoring into the physical plane and crystallizing, it moves through uh, physical matter, carrying the vibrational information from one location to another. And then we also have the vertical negative green, which is very detrimental for humanity, and it's associated with harmful Earth radiation, but it's also associated with electromagnetic radiation made by man-made technologies, as well as it is associated with negative mental practices. So when you have negative or destructive thoughts, you're basically in your own being, in your own energy system, are creating this vertical negative green, which then spreads through the environment. It also has a very dehydrating effect on living organisms. And de Belizal, who is one of the famous French radiesthesists, he would talk about how it was possible for him to kill an adult tree in 1 week simply by submitting that tree to the action of this vertical negative green, and actually then repeated this in laboratories in Czechoslovakia and in Russia, where physicians actually killed flies, spiders, mosquitoes, etc. at will, simply by submitting them to the action of the vertical negative green quality. So think of it as a carrier wave that is able to carry information and energy far, far and wide. Now, when we look at man-made electromagnetic frequencies and man-made technologies, this is really an unperceived danger that could lead to global extinction. And most of you're here and you already know about this, so I don't have to talk to you about how detrimental electromagnetic frequencies are. But I want to talk to you about two different aspects of man-made technology. And most people are familiar with, when we talk about EMF, are familiar with electromagnetic radiation. That's really like the primary effect that's created by the electromagnetic fields that are surrounding it. And this quality, actually, the further you move away from the source, the less the effect. So if you move sufficiently away from man-made technology, you have no effects of the electromagnetic radiation because the energy density decreases the further away you go from the source. But then there is a secondary effect created by this, which is electrosmog. And these are in the form of longitudinal compression waves that we talked about earlier. And longitudinal compression waves, as we talked about, they can be faster than light. And these are also not electromagnetic in nature, but they have the ability to spread way further, even though they're more subtle, and they can linger for a long time in large areas, and they carry this detrimental information of the source that they come from. They carry it far and wide throughout our environment. So while you can shield from electromagnetic radiations, you cannot from electrosmog, because there are longitudinal compression waves and they go straight through physical objects or Faraday cages. And because of this, we have to really look at a different way of looking at the detrimental effects by man-made technologies, because the primary model of evaluating the health effects of man-made technologies is really a mechanistic model. They're only dealing with the gross physical effects as usual. So they only look at thermal heating, for example, or some other effects that are in the physical band of existence. However, there are multiple bodies of research that show how EMF from modern technology affects living beings at the information level. So the actual programming of the cells and biological events, which are governed by very weak and sensitive EMFs. And the problem is that the man-made EMFs that go into our bodies, but also in the body of the Earth, are thousands of times stronger than the natural vibration that are used for information exchange. So for nature to get the information transmitted in our modern environment, where we're being bombarded by man-made EMFs, it's like moving a breeze through a storm, right? And as we previously talked about the negative green, it gives you a better view of how information is actually moved through our environment. So one of the things is that electromagnetic man-made technologies, they actually have a very strong vertical negative green quality, meaning that they're very detrimental to living systems, but also that they can spread this quality far and wide through our environment. So Let's look a little bit more at electrosmog, because electrosmog is really misunderstood, again, because people are only looking at electromagnetic radiation, and they're looking at these electromagnetic meters to determine if an environment is safe. And a lot of electromagnetic meters, they're not even able to detect, like smart meters, for example, because they use bursts. So if you're using one of those analog trimeters, it's not going to show you any effects of more modern applications of electromagnetic frequencies like smart meters, for example. But then what they can absolutely not detect the secondary effects that we've talked about, like electrosmog. And one analogy that we can use to show why this is if you consider a boat that is moving through water. So you have the obvious primary effect. You get hit by the boat. That's the primary effect. Or you're close to the boat and you get hit by one of the big waves. And that's what electromagnetic radiation can be compared to. So you have a phenomena that only takes place very close to the boat, that is really strong, but it doesn't last very long. Now, the electrosmog is actually the little waves that you see as after the boat has gone, these little waves that linger for a much longer time, and that actually propagate way further. So that's just if you take one boat. So you can consider electrosmog as these subtle waves that linger in the environment. Now imagine that you have many boats passing through, then what's going to happen is that all these more subtle secondary waves, these longitudinal compression waves, they're actually going to form standing waves as they go in resonance with each other. And in the case of like a man-made technology, just think about how many sources of man-made electromagnetic frequencies that you have. And then imagine each of those creating these small ripples far and wide that then go in resonance with each other and form these standing waves. So another analogy that we can use is if it rains, you can look at the rain falling down as the electromagnetic radiation, while the fog that forms and that lingers for a long time and that can spread very far as being the electrosmog. So solutions like the cosmic tower and biogeometry and other harmonizing solutions, they work on the secondary wave pattern, and to change it there and creating harmony in that way. So let's talk about the Miracle of Hemberg. And this is actually, for me, this is like a landmark study and also a landmark project. And to give you a little bit of the background, Hemberg was a little town in Switzerland, and they installed cellular antennas in the church of this town. And what started to happen was that the residents of Hemberg began to experience serious electrostress problems. And there were numerous signs in the natural world that the area was being severely affected by these new cellular antennas. The bird population in the area was very diminished, as was the appearance of wild mammals living in the area. And that was for the animals that were able to leave the area. Those animals which were not free to leave the area began to act severely agitated, and the rate of miscarriages by farm animals increased. And then what they noticed, when farm animals that were being raised for food were being processed, they noticed that tumors began to be seen on their internal organs. And one of the reasons that I consider this a landmark project, even though it's been more than 20 years, is for a number of reasons. They called in Ibrahim Karim, who then analyzed the issue and was actually able to neutralize all these effects and an amazing results. And for me, this is a landmark project for three reasons. One, that Swiss Telecom and the Swiss government had to admit that there was actually a problem with the man-made electromagnetic frequencies and with these cellular antennas, but also because the second reason being that Dr. Karim proved that he could not only measure these subtle effects, but he was able to remediate those effects by harmonizing them. And he actually did it through biogeometry and by using shapes. And then for me, the third reason why this is a landmark project is because both Swiss Telecom and Swiss government had to acknowledge that he got the results and that he was able to remediate the issues by things that mainstream science would call quackery or not possible because they have such a limited view of what reality is, as we talked about before. But many of the residents in that area, after they installed the cellular antennas, they talked about how they had headaches and pressure and how they really felt how their life force energy was being sucked away. So if we look at the symptoms of the resonance, we see depression, nervousness, sleeping disorders, difficulty to get to sleep, exhaustion, and loss of energy, weakness of memory, irritability, headaches, migraines, allergies. And what you can see is that a lot of these are actually in the more subtle planes, right? In the mental plane, the emotional plane, and in the energetic plane. So Dr. Karim successfully eliminated the ailments of electrosensitivity, among other health conditions, through implementing his solution, as well as positively impacting the overall ecology of the area. So after he implemented his shapes and solutions, the people had better sleep, fewer headaches, they were less aggressive, and they had much more energy. And they really had their quality of life that had been robbed from them by the man-made technologies. They had that quality of life restored. The other thing that happened is that the birds and the bats that had moved away from the area, they actually started to return to the area. So this is a really interesting project that opens our minds to this more subtle energy spectrum. And we really have to take a different approach when we're looking at man-made technologies, because clearly blocking them out is not going to work. Mind you that the people that were living in the town, they try to block the electromagnetic energy and the electromagnetic radiation. For example, a lot of them on the weekend, when there were a lot of visitors to the area and the cell towers were heavily used, they would move into their basements and use the electromagnetic shielding. But still, with doing all that, they weren't able to get any relief or to get any results. And that's really clear when we consider that electrosmog is not an electromagnetic phenomena, but it actually works through longitudinal compression waves, disturbing our spiritual, mental, emotional, and the energetic layer, and also the physical. So what I will do is I really encourage you to learn more about this project. So I will put a link down this video to a short 5-minute video where Dr. Ibrahim Karim talks about his work at Hemberg. And then I will also post 3 videos of Dr. Karim. And I highly encourage you to watch all three of them because they're really informative. But especially watch the second video where he talks about his work in Hamburg in much more detail. So that was it for this video in the Cosmic Towers Science series. And thank you so much for watching this video. Give it a thumbs up if you like it. And I hope to see you in the next video. Thank you and bye-bye.